Hi, everyone. Welcome to Aurelian Coaching. I'm Nicole Littman. Thanks for joining this week. Today, we are talking about managing multiple initiatives with limited resources. So what this means is you really wish you had more people on your team. You really wish you had more bodies to do the work. It could mean you really wish you had more budget. You know, could you do your job better and more efficiently if you just had more money at your disposal to execute on these things, right? Or time. You know, wouldn't it be great for there to be 26 hours in a day instead of 24? No, it would be horrible, but a lot of people want more time. Here's what I suggest. All of it, whether it's people, budget, whatever resources that you feel are limited and that are restricting you from executing as optimally as you wish you could, what I suggest is that all of it boils down to time. 100% of it is time. People hear time is money, but they don't really understand or internalize that. And a lot of people push back on me and say, hey, look, I need people. There is expertise that I need that I don't have. That doesn't translate to time. But it does. It does. Because what are you doing without that expertise? Certainly you're taking longer to do something, right? Everything, without that expertise, everything's just going a lot slower, right? Or it's not getting done at all, right? Or you have people that you're taking away from other initiatives and putting them on a track of learning, right? So they are trying to develop those skills to become experts. It all boils down to time. And so even if you don't believe me, even if you're like, you're crazy, these are totally separate issues, and I need help managing with limited resources with people or money, and it doesn't have anything to do with time. Okay, fine. If you don't believe me, that's okay, okay? But what I want you to do is make sure that you're optimizing the time factor before you start complaining about limited resources in other channels, okay? Because if what I believe is true, and this is what I've seen over many, many years, is that when we are actually using our time wisely, when we are producing, creating, accomplishing things with our time, we find a couple of things. Number one, we're capable of a lot more than we thought we were. And number two, even if it doesn't solve the big issue about hiring for that role that we need, it gives you so much more breathing room. So you feel less pressure, less under the gun, okay? And so I'm gonna walk you through a lot of efficiency and productivity things that I want you to implement, that I want you to implement with your teams, just with yourself, okay? Before you start saying, no, we just need all this other stuff. Because here's the thing, whatever time challenges that you have currently, I'm not sure that adding another person solves those time challenges, right? And in fact, a lot of times it exacerbates, right? So if you have a team culture that is not particularly productive and has all these inefficiencies that you might not even recognize, adding another person into that culture just exacerbates everything, right? And so 6 months down the line, you might feel like those same challenges coming up again, okay? So here are the time solutions that I want you to implement. And it has to do with the type of work that we're doing. Okay, so there are two types of work that everybody does. One has to do with what's often called the whirlwind. So this is your day-to-day work, right? So this is your email and your meetings and your phone calls, and it's just the stuff that kind of sucks you in. Okay, so that's the whirlwind. That's one type of work. And then the other type of work is more longer term. So over the midterm or the long term, there are overarching key initiatives that, whether it's you personally as part of your performance, or it's your team or department, or even the entire organization, these are things that need to be accomplished over the mid to long term. Okay, so those are the two categories. Let me tackle the first one. In the whirlwind, okay, there are two types of things that you need to solve for. One is your calendar. And I've talked about this before, a lot of times, but here are the things that I want you to implement to help you mitigate this feeling of limited resources. You just need to be smarter and implement some different habits. One is, if there are things that you need to do, you personally, to be effective in your job, things that you need to produce, things that you need to create, things that you need to accomplish, you reserve time for you to do that work first. Block out the time that you need to do that work. This is what people don't do. They just leave their calendar open, and they are subject to everybody else dropping things into their calendar, and then they feel so overwhelmed, and at the end of the day, they're like, oh, I didn't accomplish anything today. Well, play defense, right? Protect your calendar, okay? If there are things that you need to get done, don't just put them on a to-do list. To-do lists don't do anything. They make you feel good? No. The to-do list is really your calendar. Reserve the time to accomplish those things. Get off the to-do list. Use your calendar. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, for the meetings and the calls and all these other things that you have coming at you, don't default to an hour. We only have 8-9 hours of a workday, right? And to just like block out an entire hour to talk about something, for that to be the default, means that you're eating up 25-50% of somebody's day when you might not need to. What I like to do is just default to 30 minutes. Everything is just 30 minutes, okay? If you need longer, okay, but chances are you won't need longer. And I don't know if you guys recognize this, but this happened to me a lot. That when meetings are always an hour by default, the team, there's an internal clock that signals an hour. And you develop a cadence for how meetings go. And it's just, have you ever felt like, oh, we're wrapping up and look at that, we're just on the hour, and you feel so happy and proud that, oh, you know, we got in on time and an hour was perfect. Guess what? That's not really the case, okay? You can develop that internal clock and that cadence for 30 minutes. Get your team used to it and watch you guys be super efficient, super efficient. And you guys will learn to make decisions, to have discussions, to do everything that you need to do within 30 minutes. That's what I suggest. What I would prefer that people do is not have a default. Be super thoughtful about how much time you need to accomplish something with somebody in a meeting or in a call. Maybe it's only 10 minutes. That's shocking. No, 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 no. Nothing can possibly happen in 10 minutes. Believe me, think about it. 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Do that instead. But if that feels really uncomfortable, start with the default of 30 minutes. Okay. The last thing, and I already talked about this, but as it relates to your calendar, rather than just reserving time to work on something or to do something, make sure that you reserve the time to accomplish something, to produce. Okay, so at the end of this hour and a half that I've reserved for me to work on my initiatives, I will have X, Y, and Z completed. Don't just work on things. Because then because then the second category of efficiency issues will come into play. And the second category of efficiency issues are distractions. Okay, so there have been tons of studies on this stuff. Okay, you don't have to take my word for it. Tons of studies that say that we are distracted way more than we think we are. Okay, and a lot of it has to do with technology. So super simple things that you should already be doing, if you aren't already, is turning your smartphone off. Just put yourself, at the very least, if you need to focus on something, put it on Do Not Disturb, right? One thing that I suggest in this week's blog post is if you can lock your phones and do a phone swap. So you are not tempted to go to your phone. If you need an hour to focus on something and actually produce something, lock your phone, give it to a coworker and say, I'll come get this an hour from now. Ooh, that makes some people nervous. It makes some people nervous. But if you're really committed to being efficient and productive, yeah, do it. Here's the other thing. Block certain websites. Block all the news websites, the Facebook, just block it. There are apps that do this, desktop and smartphone. Cut it out. Do not give yourself the option to indulge in any of those distractions. And then, surprise, surprise, look how efficient and productive you are. It's amazing. Okay. So those are the sets of strategies for dealing with the whirlwind. Okay, how to become a more efficient by using your calendar and proactively managing your time, and then secondly, mitigating distractions. Okay, now on to some of these overarching initiatives. Okay, so there is the day-to-day work. There are things that are part of your job description and your duties and responsibilities that you just need to tackle every day, right? But there are some things that you need to chip away at. And for those things, those longer term things, there are 4 strategies that you need to implement with yourself, with your team, with your organization in order to actually get some traction on those longer term initiatives. And here are the 4 things. By the way, this is adapted from the 4 Disciplines of Execution. It's something came out of the Franklin Covey group. So it's an old book, but God, does it work? It works. Okay. So number 1, make sure the goal of these initiatives are crystal clear to everybody who has any part in doing anything related to that initiative. You'd be surprised sometimes when you ask people, especially if it's a longer term thing, right? And even if you stated at the beginning, at the launch of the initiative, and 6 months in, you ask people again, and you're going to get a lot of different answers on why are we doing this. So make sure it's super clear to everybody what you're working toward. Why is this going to be valuable? Why should any of us be working on this at all? Make sure that's clear. It provides an anchor for the team. Okay. Second is this concept of lead metrics. So this is something where sales is a very typical example where a lag metric is basically what your goal is. So say you want to increase sales by 20% every quarter, and you wait until the quarter's over, and then you get the sales report, and then you say, oh, we didn't meet our goal. Oh, that sucks. So what are we going to do differently? And then you do things differently, and at the end of the next quarter, you get the report, and you say, oh, how did we do? Oh, we didn't meet our goal again. Or maybe you did, but you know, you're just kind of trying different things. That's a lag metric. It's after the fact. What I suggest teams do is you identify lead metrics. What are the behaviors, the interim milestones, the interim goals that you need to hit that indicate that are indicators for whether you will actually hit the lag metric. Okay, so for sales, it may be something as simple as number of meetings per week, number of calls per week. It could be any other type of behavior, activity, or metric that is upfront, that is upstream of the lag metric. Those are called lead metrics. And what they do is they identify your areas of leverage, right? Because those lead metrics are indicators of success on the lag metric, if you are monitoring those lead metrics as you go, you can do the course corrections necessary to meet your goal. And then it's not like, well, now we have the lag metric, the sales report, and we didn't make our numbers, and now we got to adjust after the fact. No. Adjust before the fact. Identify what those key leverage points are, impact those, and then you're more likely to succeed. Okay, so that's number 2. Number 3 is track all this progress and post it publicly. So as you go, don't wait for a report at the tail end, and don't make it secretive, like only certain people get this report. No, have a blood drive meter and make sure it's clear to everyone how the progress is coming along. Okay, so that keeps things top of mind, because what's going to happen is you set these long-term initiatives and people just get caught in the whirlwind, right? They check their email every day instead of batching it in the morning and the afternoon, or they have these sidebar conversations and they're pulled in this direction. And no, if you have something publicly available that says this is where we are, this is our status on our longer term goals, it makes it top of mind. Okay, the last thing that you need to do is accountability. And there is a lot written about the culture of accountability, but here's what I want to say about accountability. Accountability is, it's what we can do for each other, right? So you need to decide to be personally accountable to something. And once that person takes accountability for doing X, Y, and Z, okay, they may need help in removing roadblocks, right? So when you take accountability, you say, I'm going to do all this stuff, right? I play a role in getting this longer term initiative accomplished. Fantastic. But if you need help removing some of the roadblocks to get there, that's where this culture of accountability comes into play. To what degree can your colleagues and your coworkers help you remove those roadblocks so you can hit the ground running again? Okay, so those are the 4 things for mid to long-term initiatives. If you implement all of this stuff, number 1, it'll give you a lot more breathing room. This is what people talk about when they say work smarter rather than harder. This is working smart. All of these things that you implement just for yourself, even if you don't feel like you have the authority to implement all of these with larger teams and departments, just do it with yourself. And at the very least, you will have all of this breathing room. You'll feel less under the gun, less pressure. You'll actually accomplish more. And without the distractions, the quality of the work is going to go way up, right? So there are all these upsides. Is it hard to do? Yeah. It can be really hard to do, to hand your cell phone to somebody and say, yeah, I'm not going to look at that for an hour, to block all these distracting websites, to, you know, protect your calendar and decline meetings because, no, I got to work on this other thing. Sorry, right? To go to your team members and say, yeah, I was supposed to do this thing, but here's this challenge and I need your help in removing this roadblock so that we can, all of us, move forward. Yeah, it's hard, but do it. Do it, and the results are going to be so much better than what you're experiencing now. And these are the things that will help alleviate all the challenges that you might be experiencing with limited resources. Okay, so it all boils down to time. Manage your time better, plan better, and you're going to see a lot of upside. Okay, so that's it for this week. Next week, we are going to be talking about setting boundaries at work. This is going to be a work-life topic. And people think they know what boundaries are, but I'm going to talk about what boundaries really are and how to set boundaries appropriately. And how to honor those boundaries. That's something that people have a really hard time doing. So that'll be the topic for next week. Until then, have a great rest of the week and weekend, and I will see you back here next week. Take care.